G'day everyone, Adrian from the Endgame. We're going to go for a fly today in a Cirrus SR22. We're going to fly out of the Sunshine Coast. Privileged to be here today with Lachie Smart, a fellow aviation enthusiast, the General Manager of Smartline Medical, a world record pilot and a sought after leadership speaker. Welcome Lachie.
Thank you, that was quite a title.
So we're going to fly out of the Sunshine Coast today, and we're going to head up to the north. It actually looks pretty nice, but you know, we were expecting some rain, but it's looking pretty nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cleared up a lot, which is nice. Where the man got it wrong.
The weatherman got it wrong. So excited to go for a fly. Why don't we get in the air and we'll have a chat up there?
Sounds good.
Good on you.
Centre Ghost Ground, Papa Sierra Uniform Alpha, Cirrus 2 PRV, information Alpha, request taxi from the Southern GA.
Papa Sierra Uniform, taxi to holding point Foxtrot, runway 31.
Taxi to holding point Foxtrot, runway 31, Papa Sierra Uniform.
Good to go.
Good to go? Happy?
I'm happy.
Everyone's happy? Righto, let's do it. Alright, we have full power. Engine T's and P's are in the green, airspeed's alive. Alrighty, we've got 90 knots, we've got a positive rate of climb. Flaps up.
Never gets old.
Doesn't, does it? But thanks for coming for a fly with us today, Lachie. Beautiful day, absolutely stunning.
It is, weather's really turned it on today. I'm really happy to be here, thanks for inviting me.
Pleasure, it's great to have you up. We didn't think the weather was going to be so good, did we?
No, we were talking last night going, we better put in an instrument plan, go up really high, try and get above the cloud, but I don't think we've touched a cloud yet.
Yeah, no, and we didn't know if we are above the cloud now. There's some cloud out to the west, but looking up to Fraser Island, the north is stunning.
Winter flying on the Sunshine Coast is something pretty special.
Isn't it? We're just talking about how smooth it is. Actually, we shouldn't have said that. I think I felt a couple of bumps as we said that. This always happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about how it's so stunning to be flying around in Queensland in winter. We can get quite bumpy in summer, can't it? Particularly with thunderstorms around, but it's beautiful in winter.
Yeah, if you're below the convection layer, it's often pretty bumpy in summer.
So you've got a theory. I talking to you about the fact that we go up and get in the air with business leaders and you know, when we're travelling around and seeing clients, you know, everyone loves to go for a fly, right?
Yeah.
So you jump in the airplane and go for a fly, but
Most do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so it's not usually it's usually yes or no, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's usually you
Very
either love it
strongly.
or you absolutely hate it and won't get in the aeroplane.
Yeah.
But flying around, it seems to open up a different type of conversation. Seems to open up a bigger conversation, and the thoughts and I guess out of the box thinking seems to happen. You've got a theory on why that is?
Yeah. Oh, I've had a lot of great conversations with people in the sky. Used to do quite a lot of flying around regional Queensland and that sort of thing. And I think when people are out of their comfort zone a little bit, which if you don't do this often, naturally you will be in a little aeroplane, it peels back those layers that you put up, the walls, to give everyone a certain impression of who you are. And then you can get to the real heart of somebody and their personality. And then if you couple that in with the fact that you're up high, and it just throws a very, very different perspective on everything, really. I mean, you're looking down at all the houses and the buildings and you're going, oh, that looks tiny down there. But when you're in the house, it looks massive. And I think we kind of maybe subconsciously apply that to problems and concepts as well, going, when you can step back and have a look from up here, it doesn't seem so bad after all, and there is always a way around it.
That's a really interesting discussion. I've actually had I've had business owners that have never talked about it before, but have suddenly got in the aeroplane and decided that some big strategy that they want to go. I recently had a business owner sort of suggest now's the time to think about maybe selling the business, and they'd never thought about it before, and you know, it seemed to have that sort of clearer perspective, which I always find interesting. And your perspective on why is interesting.
Yeah, I think it's hard not to change your perspective when you're looking at everything like this. And I'm sure you're going to overlay some footage over this of what we're looking at rather than just us. But it's just so different to what you experience in everyday life. You kind of have to shift the way you look at things when you're up here.
It is, isn't it? you don't tend to have the distractions too. The distractions of everyday life have disappeared a bit too. You're not constantly getting emails, you're constantly getting phone calls. You've just got time to watch the world go by.
Well, I think, and that if you go back 50 years, people were okay with being bored. I mean, I wasn't around 50 years ago, but even when I was a kid, just before social media and smartphones really kicked in, it was okay to be bored. That was normal. And I think when you have time for your brain to process things that have happened and thoughts, you're able to come up with more creative thinking and understand your problems a little bit better. But when we're just bombarded 24/7 with entertainment and emails and communications, you don't have that time for your brain to process anymore. There's a lot of interesting research around it, around the left side thinking. And I think that's something that you get forced to do up here. Not that you're bored, because you're always concentrating on flying an aeroplane, but you don't have 1,000 things happening at once. It's just you, the aeroplane, and everything around you.
It's an interesting perspective. I can certainly remember as a kid, not having the mobile phones. I can remember not having those sorts of distractions, and how different things were then. And I think that, like you say, that being bored was allowed, or you kind of need to learn to be bored, didn't you? Because you couldn't just constantly pick up an iPad and go and distract yourself. Where our kids nowadays, they love those iPads.
And I think it's important to force yourself to do that still, because I mean, I don't know about you, but when do your best ideas come?
Yeah, 100%.
For me, it's in the middle of the night, when I'm having a shower, when I literally have nothing to do because I don't have anything around me. In places like this, I get some great ideas as well. It's all times where I'm not in the middle of doing 1,000 things at once. But we never have those times anymore. Very rarely do we have those times unless you force yourself to make time for being bored. When I'm speaking about it, particularly to young people, because they're just slammed by content all the time, whether it's social media or communication, work, school, whatever they might be doing. There's never a time where they have to be bored anymore, because the second nothing's happening, boom, it's pick up the phone. And so it's really important to make space for your creativity, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to process thoughts properly, which I believe, I'm not a psychologist, but I believe leads to increased mental health. And then on the other side, it helps you come up with much better ideas and schedule your thoughts a little better.
Yeah, and I find, and I've just, I guess I've learnt this over many years, but I get out and go walking, and that's when everything becomes clear. I don't take the mobile phone with me. I'm actually not one of those people to even listen to music when I walk. I walk out the door. I'll walk for an hour or more, and I'll find that things that have been on my mind, things that I've been trying to solve, they just get solved. You walk around, you clear the mind, you're not distracted by things, and suddenly you think clearer. And it's kind of like being up here today.
Yeah, and a lot of people probably listening to this going, oh, that's stupid. We've come so far about being able to schedule our time and get lots done at once, but trust me, just try it. You've got nothing to lose. You will notice a big difference.
Yeah, 100%. I'm completely on board with that. I used to say to, when I was working with other CEOs, that the CEO really needs to have time to be able to just sit, put your feet up on the desk and think about strategy. You need to be able to give yourself that time where I think, these days there's just so many demands on leaders, time, and whether it's be with the board, with the team, with the expectations externally, internally, and really you've just got to be able to set that time aside to be able to put your feet up on the desk, go for a walk, whatever it might be, and be able to think strategically. It's hard to think. I don't know. I'm no psychiatrist either. I don't know the reasons why, but I do know that it's very hard to think strategically when your mind is so full of other things.
I suppose in your world you'd be using things like taking time to work on the business rather than work in the business, and that's I think the same applies to life as well. As you spend so much time doing that you don't spend much time being anymore, and we're human beings after all, not human doings. So it's always great to take a step back, force yourself to go, hey, how am I looking at my life from the bigger picture perspective?
So your experience was certainly far bigger than mine, but similar in a lot of ways. I had a passion for aviation. really early in life. Flew first solo on my 16th birthday. It was the first day I could do it, and I'd been planning that for some years. Even down to needing to get the day off from school and having to walk into the headmaster's office who. He really was not favourable of people taking the day off from school, so having to nervously go in there and get the day off from school and having to work the school holidays and work and go and save that money to fly. You had a similar experience, I understand. It teaches you a lot about work ethic and various other things, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think it does. Certain people have just this need to fly. It's not like you go, oh, that could be fun, I might try flying. Some people are just born to fly. I always said avgas runs through my veins, and for me it was similar. We didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. Mum and Dad separated when I was 2, which I don't complain about because I got 2 birthdays, 2 Christmases. But it did mean that I didn't have a whole lot of money, and unfortunately that is something that's usually required for learning to fly. And so my first hours in the sky were earned by doing work experience, washing planes, cleaning hangars, admin work, all that sort of stuff. And then at the end of the week they go, oh, do you want to go up and have a fly? Yes, absolutely. That's how I got my first few hours. And then likewise, I was just after my 16th birthday, I had my first solo. And the lead up to it was just next level because you know you're getting close, but you don't know when. And I remember my instructor, his name's Alistair, we'd been doing circuits, and he says, he gets on the radio, doesn't talk to me, he gets on the radio, lets air traffic control know we need a full stop and just to pull off to the side of the runway so he can get out at holding point alpha. And I was like, why you get, it all just clicked in. I was like, no way, it's happening. And got airborne, and the feeling, the aeroplane's so different when you do your first solo because you're so used to having the weight of 2 people in the aeroplane. In cars, for people listening, you don't feel the difference when you've got 1 or 2 people in the car. But in an aeroplane, you absolutely can tell the difference. In an aeroplane, you've done your first, 10, 20 hours of flying in. And all of a sudden, it's now much lighter. Gets off the runway much quicker, and you're banking out. And then I think it's on your downwind leg, which is when you're parallel to the runway, getting ready to land again. That's when you realise, like, there's no backup now. There's no one else in the aeroplane. This is 100% on me. And that's when you get a little bit nervous, but it just went so fast. It was the most amazing experience. It'll still go down in history as one of the most life-altering days for me.
Yeah, I'm the same. It was one of those. I can remember very clearly the lift off and the feeling of lifting off on your own was. I think something I've never replicated since. It's just something that was an amazing experience. Like you say, the aircraft was behaving differently, but just the fact that there was an empty seat there,
yep.
it was an amazing feeling. Having spent those hours, getting up to being able to do that, and then suddenly you're there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're absolute nerds for airplanes like we are, I think it's something you put so much emphasis on as well. It's not just a milestone that passes by and everyone does it. Like, this is what you've worked for as long as you've loved aeroplanes, is that moment. So it's very exhilarating.
My father always used to love to tell the story. He told it at my wedding, actually. He used to love to tell the story how we went out there on my 16th birthday. We went out, we did the first solo, and then we came back. And on the way back, I decided it'd be a good idea. I'll go and sit my L's, right? I'll go and sit the L plates. I was on a high, and nothing could beat me, and I failed them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I failed them.
I just got back from your first solo.
Exactly. I could fly the aeroplane around solo.
Yep.
And then I failed the L plates. My father thought it was extremely funny. I didn't.
Oh, it's so backwards. I mean, the fact that you can. I used to get dropped off here, or I'd be on my learners, but yeah, get dropped off by my dad. To then go take an aeroplane, which is a much more complex machine to operate than a car.
Yeah.
Well, some would argue it's not, but much more complex machine to operate than a car. And I'd go and do that on my own, but then I had to be supervised to drive home. It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. It is mind-blowing. I think the day, the failing of the L plates, like I remember, I must have had so much adrenaline running through me on the day, but the failing of the L plates, I didn't deal with that too well. I was quite emotional about it, and I thought it just showed, there was such learning for me from that experience about, when things happen, and your emotions and how they can affect decisions that you make, and how they can actually affect things you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and you just don't see them. Sometimes you don't recognise it, or you don't bring it into your decision-making process, that you're getting emotional about certain things and not looking at the facts, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, your emotions do play into your decision making, and then your unconscious bias as well, which can be altered by recent experience. So I think that's something they train us quite well for with aviation, is trying to monitor those as best as you possibly can. Even that screen when we were starting up, running through the arm safe procedure, which is, for those listening who don't know, is a self-check for you as the pilot, as opposed to your pre-flight checks just for the aeroplane.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things that I've learned out of aviation that have been applied in business. Really, some of that, some of the biases that you're trying to avoid in aviation, I think ring true in business. I've seen a number of cases where confirmation bias has been a huge factor at board level, in executive teams where you want this to be true so much that you ignore all of the evidence that doesn't support the story that you want. And
just go and find the evidence that does. Yeah. Exactly,
and in aviation, it's there's been many people killed, right, from heading off into bad weather, and then hearing an aeroplane, it might be a commercial jet, safely landing at the destination, and then ignoring all of the rest of the weather information and pushing on, and just that human bias to take that piece of information that you want to hear is so strong.
I think aviation's it's filled with phenomenal metaphors for business and life,
isn't it?
But if you're looking at resilience, for example, or persistence, getting through tough times, overcoming adversity. Do you remember the 3 words? Like one of the first things you ever learn when you've got a problem in an aeroplane?
Yeah, aviate, navigate, communicate, right?
Exactly right. And I think that's the same thing if you're facing adversity in real life. It's the simplest way. If you've got something going wrong, most people go to, okay, got to figure out a new plan, got to get the team on board, no, just stop for 1 second. First thing is level the wings and just fly the aeroplane, fly the business. Do what you have to do to get everything okay. Don't worry about everyone else. Don't worry about what you're doing after that. Just settle the current situation, just aviate. And then the next step's navigate. So that could be pivot your current plan to where you're going to go next. And only once you've stabilised the business or the aeroplane, you've figured out where you're going next, getting out of that thunderstorm or away from that mountain, only then do you go and communicate and go, hey team, we did have an issue, everything's okay, or hey, air traffic control, I've had to divert because I've had an emergency with weather or the aircraft or whatever it might be. If you don't follow that order, you get yourself into even more trouble, because then you're trying to manage way too many things at once. And so those 3 simple words actually I use as a metaphor anytime we're facing struggles, life, personally, or business, or well and truly when we're in the aeroplane.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't thought about it that way before, but it's got a lot of similarities to where the end game, the name, the end game for the business came from, and it's my background is really in a lot of crisis situations, and a lot of financially struggling businesses, and having to get them performing and turn them around and get things happening, and I tell the story often, and it's really where that end game came from of one particular business where we wrote the plan on the back of a beer coaster, and I mean literally, we wrote the plan on the back of a beer coaster. We were struggling, the whole team. Nobody could get direction. We just and we sat down one day. We're in a pub. We just had a board meeting, and I just sort of said, what? Well, we're losing all this money. What does success look like? Would success look like coming back to just a base level of profitability? And everyone's nodding their heads. And so I put that up the top right-hand side of the beer coaster, and then at the bottom left-hand side of the beer coaster, put where we are. That's approximately our performance now. Essentially, what we've got to do is draw a line between those 2 points. And interestingly, that became the turnaround. That developed the budgets. That developed the messages to that team. That then started to develop our mission, our purpose. But it was coming back to that simple: what is the end game? What are we actually here to try and achieve? Let's try and figure that out and just have that in a real simple term before we start going through all the rest of the detail.
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of speaking, as you know, like corporate speaking, and my focus area is in youth leadership development, but I sometimes get brought in for more corporate side of things as well. And I think when you're dealing with people who have come from a technical background, which most founders are, which is I know the area you work with, it's very easy to get caught up in the tactical. So they're getting very specific with your goals, and looking at the details of a plan rather than stepping back and going, what's my actual strategy? And when I'm talking to young people in particular, we use a framework developed off the back of the World Flight called the Vespa framework. And that forces them to step back. And it's great because everyone normally starts with the S in Vespa, which is specific goals. So they're going, well, I want to make $5 million a year revenue and have $1 million a year of that to be net profit, or I want to get a bit cold outside. Or, you know, they might have their other goal as, for young people, it might be that I want to go and get this degree, or I want to end up in this career. It's like, well, just hold the phone here, take a step back and ask yourself, why is that important? You know, so if you go back 2 steps from S, go back to V, we talk about values off the bat and try and figure out for you as a person and for your team, what are the things that drive you on an emotional and personal level? Because those are the things that are going to give you much higher motivation when times get tough. And it's also going to give your team more of a direction and a decision-making framework when there's ambiguity. And so once they go back and go, well, actually, you know, my values are family, being able to provide for my family, especially if we're working with individuals. And as part of that is being able to spend quality time with them. And we go, hey, okay, so it is possible for you to go and earn $5 million a year and have $1 million a year of net profit, but that's going to require you having 70-hour work weeks, which is going to infringe on your other value. And then it saves the whole hassle of going and figuring that out 9 months down the track and going, I'm actually hating my life, I'm earning great money, but I'm never getting to do the things that I actually find fulfilling. And for young people particularly, it's very hard to take that step back because their first experience with leadership is they get thrown in a position. For example, I work with a lot of school captains or people leading university groups, and it could be their first experience with leadership, and they've had someone above them, usually a teacher or professor of some description, go, all right, you're in this position, what do you want to do? What goals do you want to set? And then they're trying to think, oh, maybe the school needs new water bubblers, or should we get some more soccer balls for the sport team? Like they're just going for specifics straight off the bat, but not asking what's actually going to make the most impact with my time. And so, yeah, it's really important, especially when you're working with technical people, to wrap back to where I was, is it's great to have a look at what are the actual drivers rather than just diving straight into the detail.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and I think that focus on values and you know, well, it's so poorly done, right? It's not just young people. You're talking to young people. It's everywhere, and we work with a lot of technical founders. I mean, I think that's largely the people that we work with. They've grown a business because of some passion for some technical thing, whatever that might be. And it's been the growing of the business part has been the secondary thing, and being able to sort of work with business owners and founders to I guess teach them how to be better business people is certainly a large part of what we do.
Yeah.
And it's exciting work.
It is, but wrapping back to values, this is a passion point of mine, so I'll try not to wrap it on too long for your video, but values are such a poorly misunderstood but most important driver of people, and a great connector and disconnector of people as well, because if you infringe on someone's value set, it's the fastest way to get them offside, particularly with teams, because then they just feel like they're a pawn coming in. You're not listening to them, they're just a piece of your chess game, and no one likes that feeling. That's the fastest way you're going to lose your team. But understanding the difference between values and beliefs is super critical, and then still having the respect for each other to go, hey, we might have different beliefs, but we have these connecting values, and I respect that. And that's something Australians are starting to do quite poorly now, is they're getting caught up in their beliefs, which is things that can and should change with the introduction of new information, to quote a friend of mine, Dave Neal. Whereas values are things that are usually inherent and won't change much throughout life. And if you don't have an understanding of the difference between those two, you can lead to a lot of conflict, especially within your teams.
And we've got a mutual friend then, Dave Neal. I'll have to get him up in the aircraft.
Oh, you'd have a phenomenal discussion with Dave.
Yeah, let's do that, hey? Dave, if you're listening, you're next.
Yeah. I think he'd love this too.
Yeah, I think he'd love getting up in the air. It's, I think I think he was going down to Parks or somewhere down there recently and had to drive, and he was posting something on our LinkedIn to say that looks like a better way to do it. Get up in the air.
Yeah, he had a few back-to-back 1am, 2am finishes, getting into hotels, leaving at 5am. I caught up with him Friday last week and he was wrecked. Him and Dave. Sorry, Jono. They were just, you could tell they were destroyed, but still full of energy and passion about what they do. It's great.
As always. It's great.
Actually, that would be a really cool video. Is to
The
have,
four of us.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Have Dave, Jono. Wow, that would be next level.
Yeah, let's do that. I think it's a good one.
See how that's flashing, giving you the warning that it's about to turn.
Yeah.
The
about to
Avenine
go.
system didn't do that. And so I'd be flying along, especially on the long flights across the ocean where you actually had to turn a degree or two every few hours because of the curvature of the Earth. So if you wanted to actually fly the shortest distance, it required you flying what looked like a curved flight path. But you'd forget that you were doing that because you'd be for, it's a 15-hour flight. So you're just sitting there for hours and hours, you're doing your flight plans, you've got 5 minutes, maybe playing some Angry Birds, and then all of a sudden the airplane's turning, you're like, whoa, what's going on? And then you're like, oh, never mind, it's meant to do that.
Meant to do that. Beautiful turning back around, isn't it?
Yep.
Something about it. I mean, I've been flying for close to 30 years. Close to. You never get bored of it, do you?
No, I could do this for hours and hours and hours and still love it just as much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing me along today. It's great.
It's it's great having you on board. It's fantastic to go for a fly with fellow aviation enthusiasts.
Yeah.
We could just keep going, right? There's plenty of fuel.
Yeah, let's chuck a flight plan amendment in. We're going to keep going.
Ring my wife and let her know we're somewhere. I don't think that'd go down that well.
So I'm going to be late. I'm just having lunch. Where are you? Gold Coast. What are you doing down there?
What are you doing on the Gold Coast? Kids are all right, are they? So you're involved now with the family business, with your family's business. How's that? We've got a few similarities. I mean, I started off in life in the family business. Started off with my father's business. He was a very technical, brilliant, very smart engineering type. He came up with some of the first radio telemetry in the country.
Yeah, right.
So he designed two-way radios, and goes back before your time, and I can remember vaguely, but in the early days, in the early taxis, they had to they wanted to come up with a way for the taxi drivers to tell the base if they were in some sort of trouble.
Yep.
And of course back then they had two-way radios, no mobile phones or anything like that. It's difficult nowadays to imagine that you would have to design something for this. And so one of the first things he designed was a way to send a digital signal across a analog two-way radio to be able to advise that the taxi driver was in trouble, so they could send a message back to base if someone was attacking them or whatever.
Wow.
He went on to further develop that into what was controlling town water supplies, sewage networks, and so all by two-way UHF radio.
Wow.
And having some of the first telemetry that would still send it all over analog radio, but would be sending digital signals across to say that the pumps are needing to turn on or off or whatever.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, so he, long story short, he was a very technical guy, and when it came to the business side of things, that wasn't his passion. And when I started working with him, and my mother was involved in the business back then, there was it was certainly quite the challenge. It was quite the challenge, and no doubt you experienced the same thing.
Yeah, my similar story. My dad, he's very technical as well. Was a fitter turner welder by trade, but an engineer at heart, I guess you could say. Like, he's a phenomenal designer of products. And so I came into the business 5 years ago. We'd just been hacked by an overseas malicious actor and had put encryption through our entire server. right down to the printer servers. We lost almost all of our data, and at the same time had a bunch of staff leave, and the company had very big problems. And I was living in America at the time. He said, "Hey, do you want to come back? I need someone I can trust." And I was not enjoying myself there. I wanted to come home. So I said, "All right." It was one of those things. I thought I'll come back for 6 months and have a bit of time in the business. Then I'll go back to speaking, which is what I wanted to do at the time. And 5 years later, here I am, still here. And yeah, and I think that's something that people who are technical minded, and especially if they're passionate and have founded the business, it's very difficult to go, business has reached a stage where my skill set isn't best served in running the business now, it's best served in other areas of the business. And to my dad's credit, that's something he did really well. He goes, it's at a stage now where I need people who are analytical, systems minded, who have maybe got experience in that side of business, in the more of the corporate world, and I will focus on the design side. And so he brought in a guy called Soren, who's just phenomenal amount of experience especially in export development, but in lots of different areas in health, which is our business, the medical business. And then I sort of was mentored under Soren, and I'd done some business training at uni as well. And my brain works like that. I'm very much pattern systems, analytics, numbers, and people. That's what I love, as opposed to designing. I'm not great. and so we found this symbiosis that just worked really well between the three of us. And Soren and I have sort of swapped roles a little bit now. And I've stepped into the general manager role, but it's similar story. Stepping into the family business. And yeah, it definitely has its challenges, because family dynamics can always be tricky, especially when you're spending 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, plus when you catch up socially. But I think we overcome them pretty well.
Yeah, I can recall that was a challenge. My father passed away some years ago, but we both shared a passion for aviation as well. He was a private pilot, and so we shared that. And I think there was probably not much that wasn't either related to flying or related to business that we talked about. You know, it was that was our life. That was it all the time. So and we had a great relationship. We flew together and worked together, and we rarely ever actually argued about that much. So we had a great relationship. But it was really down to those passions we talked about. Flying, and he talked about the technical of his products and his engineering all the time, and stuff he designed and stuff he programmed, and I tried to help him in sales and business development, and how do we position the business differently in the market. And, ultimately we made a great team, but it was just interesting going through that as one of my first experiences with technical founders, right?
Yeah.
Then went on to experience many more as I do today. But a lot of those behaviours, a lot of those mentalities are similar.
And understandably, I mean, they say that having a business that you formed and run for a very long time is almost like you have the same emotional attachment to it, like a child in some ways. And so it would be very difficult to, especially 20 years is how long my dad had been running the company before he passed on the keys, so to speak. It would be very difficult going, I've done this for 20 years and now I'm going to trust someone else with it. I understand that would be very tricky to let go, but at the same time, if you want it to flourish and succeed, you need some outside help sometimes. And so yeah, to Dad's credit, he did that very well. It definitely had its difficulties in the transition, understandably, but now we're in a great spot. The business is launching into new markets all around the world. We've just signed distribution arrangements with an additional something like 12 countries in the last 3 months, and we're seeing the fruits of all the hard work over the last 3 years of really hard business development now starting to come to fruition.
Fantastic. I don't know whether we're about to run out of batteries here on our device. If we do run out of batteries, it has been great. It's been great flying with you.
Thank you. It has been
very
a pleasure.
much enjoyed it.
Appreciate coming up.
If we do run out of batteries on the video, we'll just get to sit here and enjoy the trip back into the Sunshine Coast, won't it? Where we're actually doing 185 knots now. So
yeah, rocketing.
For those who don't know, that's going reasonably quick in an SR22.
Yeah, for a single engine piston, that's moving.
Might have to get a lead to keep it powered in flight, might be the go.
Yeah.
We'll keep learning. We're no video experts. I think we can say that.
flying's our thing. We're still working on the
That's
video.
it, we're working on the video. But we're really getting up there in speed now, hey? We're doing 214 knots of ground speed on the way down to the sunny coast.
Rocketing it.
A little bit of weather in front of us, but...
A few bumps.
I really enjoyed getting in the air with you today. I think we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it very much too. Sounds fantastic.
I think we've got much still to talk about. I think we could keep going for hours, but
I think so.
we've both probably got jobs we've got to get back to doing.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Businesses.
Yeah.
Very much enjoyed today and the conversation and the flying, so do appreciate it.
Oh, good. Loved having you on board. Just got to get this aeroplane back down on the Sunshine Coast now. Be good.